Welcome to Your Pharmacy Career Podcast, proudly produced by Ravens Recruitment, the experts in pharmacy career and locum services for over 30 years. Every episode is your gateway to new opportunities in the pharmacy profession. From expert advice to inspiring success stories, we're here to spark ideas, guide your career, and help you achieve your goals. Stay tuned. The next step in your pharmacy journey starts here.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Your Pharmacy Career Podcast. I'm your host, Christy Lee Patterson, and today I'm joined by the thoughtful and inspiring Daniel Nasri, consultant pharmacist, advisor, educator, and mentor. And after more than a decade in community pharmacy, Daniel has carved out a unique, purpose-driven portfolio career that includes HMRs, education, consulting for PHNs, and even more. Daniel, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks very much, Christy Lee. I'm really happy to be here and have a chat with you.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Now, Daniel, when I get people on the podcast, I always ask them about their pharmacy journey and how it started. So I believe that yours started when you were in high school. What do you remember about those early days?
Yeah, a long time ago now. But yeah, I began working in pharmacy. It was actually my first job at a pharmacy down the street back in year 9 or 10. And it was a really positive experience. So the pharmacists I worked with were really knowledgeable. It felt like a family, the relationships they had with patients, the knowledge they were able to impart, and the way they were able to help them. So it was a really positive experience. The work as well with the pharmacists themselves, it didn't feel like they were my bosses. They felt like friends and mentors. And so it was a really nice work environment as well. So I think all of those things were quite impressionable in my early days working.
Yeah. So did you always think that you'd want to be a pharmacist then, like from working in that pharmacy, or did something kind of trigger you to think, yes, this is definitely what I want to do? Or did you consider any other careers?
I did. I think, towards the later stages of high school, as I was doing some subjects around, biology and business studies, really enjoyed those. And pharmacy just seemed like the best mix or bringing of all of those things together. And so, I had different preferences, physiotherapy and a few other health-related fields and business-related ones. But I think pharmacy was my first preference, and it really meshed together what I was interested in at the time. And so it just felt like the next logical step for me.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I think the fact that you had such a good experience in that pharmacy that you worked at early on, and you could see the difference that they make to people's lives would definitely have been made a huge impact on you.
Yeah, it definitely was the case for me, yeah.
So once you graduated, you spent majority of your time in community pharmacy throughout your career. How long did you spend in community pharmacy, and why did you decide to, transition from community pharmacy to have what people call a portfolio career?
Yeah, so when I started in community pharmacy, I became a pharmacist, I think, 2009, 2010. But when I look back, I'm like, I've been in pharmacy since year 9, so it feels like 2 decades, not just a little over 1 decade. But, I had a really positive internship as well. I was working in a very sort of progressive and innovative pharmacy that exposed me to so many things from, CPAP to wound care to being on the road with credentialed pharmacists, visiting them, watching them in action doing HMRs. But in terms of sort of transitioning from community pharmacy to, what we might call a portfolio career, it was probably a combination of things. It did get, to the stage where I was feeling a little bit burnt out from feeling pulled in so many different directions, as maybe you can relate when you've done some shifts in community pharmacy. It's been my experience where sometimes it can be very reactive. You're answering phone calls, you're checking scripts, you're dealing with queries in the front of shop, and so it felt very intense. I was working in quite high volume pharmacies and started managing some of those as well. So I learned a lot and really enjoyed it. But I think it got to the stage where I'm like, if I'm not going to pursue ownership, which is what I was envisaging from early on, even when I was at uni, I was like, I need to sort of consider some other options. And the pandemic was a real circuit breaker, as many people have echoed in their experience. But during that time, my wife was my fiance at the time. We were trying to plan a wedding. And so we were dealing with the craziness of what was happening in community pharmacy, and then, changing government policies, which were changing like the weather regarding, trying to organize a wedding. So it was just pretty full on. And at that point, I knew that something had to change. And so I made a decision to pull back from full-time work and started working part-time. And that really, I guess, helped me to look at my options and take some time to step back and reevaluate what it is that I wanted from my career and where I felt I can provide more value. At the same time, I had a really good working relationship with one of the GPs upstairs, and he approached me and asked me if I'd be open to joining a advisory committee with the Primary Health Network, called the PHN. And so that was quite instrumental as well, because it was really nice to start working in a setting that was non-clinical and was more strategic, and working with other, healthcare providers and people in the PHN. And so that was a really positive experience, and I guess whetted my appetite for what else is out there and where else I can provide value as a pharmacist outside the four walls of the pharmacy. Yeah.
That makes sense. And when you talked about planning a wedding during COVID, I was doing the exact same thing with my now husband, and yes, crazy time. And I don't know if you ended up having your wedding during COVID times, but we did, and we only had 5 people at our wedding. In some ways, that was also really amazing, because it was just cut out a lot of the stress and drama, and then we live streamed the rest of it. So obviously it all worked out and you were able to get married, which is good.
Thankfully, yes. Yeah, wow.
But you also touched on earlier in your answer about being in community pharmacy for so long and feeling pulled in different directions. I can definitely relate to that. And you mentioned that you hadn't just been in community pharmacy for a decade. It was really more, almost 2 decades. And I was very much the same too. So I started in pharmacy before my degree. So by the time I graduated, I'd been in community pharmacy for 8 years already. So that's like longer than most people stay in their careers. So you're right. I always kind of thought the next step was ownership. It's very similar to what you said. But I think now there's just so many different options that you can do. And the fact that GP just reached out to you and asked you to sit on a committee, that's kind of leapfrogged you to, I guess, more strategic roles and doing different things that still have an impact on patients, but maybe not as crazy as a very high volume pharmacy.
Yeah, it was that transition as well from, I think, a very reactive environment where, especially during COVID, where it felt like we were constantly putting out fires, to, I guess, a area of work where there's a bit more perhaps creativity and collaboration, which was really a fresh change for me. So, yeah.
Absolutely. So you're also an accredited pharmacist. Well, I know that kind of changing the names of them now. I think you're considered a consultant pharmacist.
Credentialed. Also known as consultant pharmacist. So, yeah.
Tomato.
That's right, exactly.
But with doing that, like I'm not a HMR accredited pharmacist, so I've got an idea as to what you would do because I've sent referrals to pharmacists that do them. But by managing that, what are some of, I guess, the challenges, or even maybe some of the things that you come across that people don't realize being a credentialed pharmacist?
Yeah, so I think it's a really unique area of pharmacy because, as you might be aware, and our audience would be aware, is you're visiting patients in their home to review their medications based off the referral of a GP. And so in terms of, you mentioned challenges, I think one of the challenges is that it's really a small business. And so you've got to be thinking about, you're not just being handed a bunch of referrals, you've got to organize your schedule, you've got to build relationships with GPs so that you're actually getting referrals. And there's limitations as well. We've got caps where you can't see more than a certain number of patients per month. Yeah, there were, I guess, challenges going into it, but also great reward, especially in terms of the connection and the opportunities to help patients in perhaps a less rushed way to community pharmacy. And that has been a really refreshing change for me working in that setting, but not without its challenges, as I've mentioned.
Yeah, you said that it's almost having a small business. Well, it's not like it actually is.
It is, yeah.
And I think that's something that, I hadn't really considered from a HMR pharmacist perspective that, yeah, you're not just, I guess, sitting back waiting for the referrals and it's just all simple and easy. It's you've got to consider things like, I guess, the company structure. Do you set yourself up as a sole trader or a company? How do you find these referrals? I guess also to, I know that some pharmacies, they like to, I guess you could call it clip the ticket a little bit, and you've got to work out payment relationships there as well. And did you find that easy? I feel like that you've got more of a bit of a strategic mindset and just naturally business savvy from what I know about you. But is this something that you, I guess, had to go and find extra information about or talk to people about how to set this up?
Yeah, I think the first step was really working out whether it was something I wanted to pursue. Once that decision was made, then it was really about talking to people who already had been doing it for quite some time, gleaning from their experiences and trying to structure yourself in the best way possible. And I guess it varies for different individuals depending on, I guess, their other responsibilities. You know, some people might view HMRs as more of a side gig. Others, it could be like their main sort of bread and butter. And so, yeah, I think for me, it was really focusing on relationship building with my practices that I was speaking to, and not just the GPs, but the practice managers, the nurses, and making sure that they had systems in place so that referrals were coming through. And then for me, it was about how do I, provide the most value, both in terms of the quality of the reports I'm producing and also a timely and efficient service, because, I'd heard feedback from some GPs where perhaps they weren't getting timely reports back. And so that affects their view of the service. And then the other thing was just realizing that in the absence or when you've got months where referrals are a little bit lower, that's not always a reflection of you or what you're doing. It's just also a reflection of the fact that GP clinics are really busy. Like my wife's a GP. And so we talk a lot about, her work and my work. And so sometimes it would be something like a gentle message or reminder to a general practice that I'm still here, I'm still providing the service, and then a flow on of referrals would come through. So yeah, there are definitely different skills and things you've got to think about. But it's also rewarding to be doing, I guess, your own thing and having the flexibility and autonomy to set a schedule and make sure it works around other, personal responsibilities or engagements.
Pharmacy Daily is a proud supporter of your pharmacy career podcast. If you're in the pharmacy world, it's a great resource to stay up to date with the latest industry news. To subscribe, just head to pharmacydaily.com.au to get the newsletter delivered straight to your inbox.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And you're right, when you're doing any sort of consulting, whether it's HMRs or like in my business, like content writing and things like that, yeah, sometimes, and now that I've been doing it for a couple of years, I'm kind of used to that kind of ebb and flow of the work. But early on, it was very stressful because there'll be times where you literally don't have anything for a couple of months and you think, oh my gosh, what's happened?
Yeah.
Do they not think I'm good at my job or something like that?
Yeah.
So I'm sure you've had feelings like that as well.
For sure. And even, around Christmas and New Year's where there's often practices that shut down and people go on holidays, I've started to, account for that and expect that things will get quieter during that time. And so, yeah, there's definitely ebbs and flows, like you say, with workload.
That's it. I guess one benefit, like if you are a credentialed pharmacist and there are, I guess, periods where there's maybe not much going on, especially around that December, Christmas period, I guess there's also plenty of locum shifts to pick up as well during that period of time.
Yeah.
As well. So what other things do you do outside of your credential business? I know you sit on the PHN, but you also educate university students as well. Yeah, maybe you could touch on that a little bit for listeners.
Yeah, sure. So I guess that opportunity sort of opened up through the work I do in general practice. I'm also a general practice pharmacist and I work in a couple of clinics throughout the week. And there was an opportunity to provide some tutoring to medical students at Western Sydney University. And again, it was something that was new, uncharted, but once I actually did it, I'm like, I really enjoyed this. I felt energized by the experience. And so I approached the university dean about like other opportunities. And so just have been appointed as an honorary fellow. And so what it has done is just I guess got me on their radar about different opportunities to tutor medical students on different areas. The beginning of the year, we did one on asthma puffers and different sort of therapeutic considerations or drug interactions and things like that. And so it's really rewarding and really enjoyable. And it's sort of an area that I see as a growing area for me of pursuit. But education at large has been something I've been enjoying and have been doing as well with the PHN. So, running workshops on home medication reviews and, the importance of them and how to look at ways of like increasing implementation of that service, as well as, I recently spoke at a conference on deprescribing polypharmacy, and that was, to an audience of doctors and nurses and allied health professionals as well. So really enjoy both sort of peer-to-peer education as well as students at university or at a tertiary level as well.
And so you mentioned that, I guess, to get that exposure to students, reaching out and saying to the university that you're interested, this is what you'd like to do. But in terms of the PHN, did that sort of come through because you had that existing relationship on the committees, or was that something that you, again, kind of let them know to say, hey, I'd like to be involved in this. How can I get a look in? How did you approach that?
Great question. I think, the initial joining on the primary health or primary care advisory committee was sort of the inroad to that. But then I really focused on providing as much value as I could from a pharmacist perspective, because they didn't have a pharmacist on the committee. And so I knew that there was a lot of knowledge, experience, and skills that we could bring as pharmacists to the table. And so it was sort of one thing led to another. So, they might have another staff member from the PHN visit to one of these meetings, and then they're like, oh, there's a pharmacist here. Can you come and speak to, or would you be open to speaking to a group of GPs and practices on HMRs? And so it was really about saying yes to opportunities as they presented themselves and really providing as much value as I could. And then, I was asked to join a healthy aging expert reference panel, which was really cool. And then that led to joining the Healthy Aging Advisory Committee. And so it was really about saying yes to these sort of little opportunities, but were great ones. And sort of how I got more plugged in to work with PHN on different projects. And that's led to, a pilot project that I'm working on at the moment in social prescribing, which has been really exciting as well.
Yeah, wow, that sounds really interesting. Would you be able to share a little bit about this project on social prescribing? Because I know that's kind of I don't want to call it a hot topic because it kind of devalues the importance of it. But I know that there is a lot more talk, even just within our industry, and a lot of the work is being, being highlighted a bit more, which is great. So could you share, what you're working on?
Of course, yeah. So I think it started with the work I was doing as a consultant pharmacist doing medication reviews. And one of the things that kept popping up, particularly with, and not only, but particularly with elderly patients, was this pervasive sense of loneliness and social isolation. And so I'll often check in on my patients' mental health as part of the review. And I just kept hearing these reoccurring stories of loneliness, relationship breakdowns, people living on their own, having family that don't really check in on them. And so it was really, I think, weighing heavily on me, because it was just so sad to see that, the people in their later years of life were feeling so alone, and the implications for their physical health was also profound. It wasn't just the effect on their mental health, which was huge, but also then, physically, it could be that they're less motivated to go see a GP or to book that blood test or whatever it is that they needed to do. Sometimes I observed this correlation where perhaps there was less engagement with people, but also with their own physical health as well. So I started sort of writing about it a bit on LinkedIn and sharing my work. And I think that was the beginning of conversations, and it really resonated with the people in my network, because they were also, experiencing similar things with patients that they were engaging with. It came up in conversations with the Healthy Aging Advisory Committee, and I think there was a whole combination of things happening at one, sort of at the same time, and timing was really good. And so I connected with Jenny Kirshner, who, created the world first pharmacist training on loneliness and social isolation, and she interviewed me as part of the training there. And so we sort of started talking as well to the PHN, and they were, I think, also on board and on across this. And so they wanted to roll this out in community pharmacy. So there was a program that was rolled out for community pharmacy. And I also suggested them, I'm like, look, I think there's also a place for consultant pharmacists to be able to really provide social prescribing services to patients, separate to HMRs, or, you can identify patients during those HMRs, but then later reach out to them and help them get connected. And I guess in a nutshell, social prescribing is really about connecting people to non-clinical services that can help improve their social well-being. And so that's where it really started. And so I did some training with the PHN around that. And there was like a website that geographically shows us, what services are available in the area and how to connect people to those services. And so it's been really exciting, and that pilot is being extended, which is really cool. So I'm looking forward to continuing the work there and seeing, I guess, both what impact we can have and perhaps what data we can get that would make this business as usual as opposed to sort of an added extra.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds really interesting. And yeah, you're right. I think there's a huge opportunity for consultant pharmacists to be involved in that process, and it makes sense, especially because you're actually going to the person's home, right, as well. So you get to see things that you probably wouldn't pick up when these patients are coming in the pharmacy. I think you might see a different side of them.
Yeah, I count it a privilege that we're, I guess, able to visit patients in their home. And often the kind of things that we see, both in terms of, medication management, but also living conditions and all of these other things, are things that other healthcare providers, pharmacists, GPs, or otherwise are not necessarily privy to. And so it's a privilege, but it's also an opportunity to really help people when we identify needs in this space.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, I'm excited to see where this goes, and I hope it does just become business as usual. That's really exciting. And I think for those that are listening, just the fact that this almost just started from you just sharing some experiences on LinkedIn. Like, you really don't know where things can lead to and the people you connect with. And even if it's not something then and there at that moment, like maybe a few months down the track or even years down the track, these people that you've connected with, you can think, oh, actually, I'm working on this thing. Maybe we could get connected. So
much value in fostering these professional relationships and nurturing them. I think LinkedIn and platforms like that are very sort of underutilized, and they are so much more than just platforms to share that you've got a new job. It is a networking platform, and so I think there's a lot of utility and benefit in sharing the work you do, and it can lead to collaborations and opportunities and just expanding your horizons of what's out there. When you've got yourself in a pharmacy or whatever context and you're just grinding away doing the work, it's sometimes you just don't notice or know what's out there until you sort of look for it.
Yeah, exactly. And being authentic and speaking about your experiences on these platforms as well, I think is really powerful. You're right. It's not just this person's got a new job update. Like, yeah, that's interesting. But I know I really value the posts where people are sharing, about maybe it's something more personal or something that they've experienced, or, hey, there's a challenge here. Do you know anyone that can help out? Like, I think those sort of things on these sort of social networking sites, especially LinkedIn, I've found really valuable.
Yeah, most definitely.
Now, Daniel, we kind of briefly touched on a bit of your personal life during COVID. So you married, and last time I saw you was actually at PSA conference last year. And since then, you've now become a dad, which is really exciting. So I just would like to ask, how is that going? and how are you managing I guess that, I hate saying work-life balance because it means that it's something that you've got to try and achieve, but I think that's just life. I think work is part of life. So how are you been managing that with a new little one running around, or maybe not quite running around just yet?
Yeah, almost wanting to, for sure. I think the first 4 months in particular was a really rough time for us. So just sort of taking a step one step back before baby arrived, Samuel. The year before, unfortunately, my mum was diagnosed with metastatic cancer and passed away in a matter of weeks.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
After diagnosis.
That's horrible.
Yeah, it was a very confronting experience, and shook our worlds. But the reason I say that is when our baby was born, it was a very bittersweet experience for me, because I was really surprised that grief had popped up in a really sort of intense way when Samuel was born. And so it was, what's described to you as a very exciting time for me was actually marked by heaviness, because there was this sense of, I really wish Mum was here to see her grandson. So yeah, that was hard. And then the other thing was we had a very sort of traumatic birthing experience. In fact, it was life-threatening for both Mum and my wife and my son. And so it was a whole bunch of things that what the heck just happened. Now, yeah, so the first 4 months I'd say were super rough. And I think I'm really thankful that I had transitioned out of a community pharmacy prior to that, because it really afforded me the bandwidth and space to step back and reschedule or fit things around what was happening outside of work. And so that has been a real blessing for me. But I'm, very thankful to report that things have improved a lot after that first sort of 4 months of craziness. It's been a real joy, with many challenges as well, not the least of which is the lack of sleep. But
yes, well.
Yeah, but it's been a real perspective shift as well, being a father now, in terms of how I approach work, or my views on work and purpose and career and direction. It really, I think, forces you to think about these things. And it's actually surprisingly what I thought would have been putting me back in my career, putting a delay to things vocationally for me. I think it's actually been a driver for better work. For me, it's about, okay, so it's made me look at my systems and go, okay, what can I be doing more efficiently? Because if there's admin work that I'm doing that I could, use technology to improve or to streamline, that means I've got more time to spend with my family. And so it's forced me to ask questions that have improved the way I do things as well, and continue to do that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I almost think, I wonder if the fact that you did lose your mum so close to you and your wife having your own child, it's almost you really understanding the value of, spending quality time with the people that you love and that are close to you. And so I don't know if you've reflected on this, but I feel that almost has probably had a huge impact on you as well, as to how you're going to be bringing up Samuel and your family, because you don't have the luxury anymore of being able to spend time with your mum. And so we're cherishing those moments.
Yeah, it's really, I guess, brought to a head the sacredness of time and how precious it is, and also it's given me really a front row seat to how the fragility of life, each day, there's a quote that I love that it says, each day is a gift and not a given right. And so also brought to my awareness how little control we actually have. There are things that are within our control, but there are so many other things that are way outside our control. And it's taught me a sense of acceptance that there are things that we can't control, and we've got to be able to sit in a space of acceptance and go, that's okay. What can I control? What is within my power to action good or to help or whatever it is? So yeah, I think there's been some big lessons from that. And I think it's also really informed, I guess, the work that I do in social prescribing, because I think in the aftermath of Mum's loss, it's been also seeing the loneliness and social isolation perhaps of my father and other people who have experienced loss as a result. And so what it's taught me is, and I guess we might know this, but it's really distilled it for me, is that everyone is facing a battle we may know nothing about. And so it's helped me approach people, whether it's peers or patients, with more empathy and with more, I guess, understanding, because we genuinely don't know. When I was for those weeks in hospital by my mum's side, it felt like the world was just going on by and my world was collapsing. And we just don't know. And when we then, when I'm doing HMRs and I have this opportunity to check in on patients, it is a unique experience for them to share things that, they've told me, like, well, I've shared things with you that I've not even shared with my doctor. And so, we have a privilege if we tap into it and we ask the questions and create safety for people to share what's going on for them.
I think that's really insightful. And I think like everyone would know that, right, in their mind, but it's just almost like just bringing it to the forefront. And if you think about different workplaces as well, it's so easy just to get involved like in the grind and what's happening, and even just with staff as well. Like, I know you've managed pharmacies before, and just you don't know what's happening with these people beyond what you're seeing. And so sometimes trying to step back and try and think what else could be going on, I think could be a really good thing to understand, not just from a patient perspective, but then also from a staff perspective as well, if you're in that space where you are managing a team or just a part of a team as well.
And it's really about taking that time to firstly build relationships where there's trust and rapport and safety for people to share, but then asking the questions, because otherwise you can make the mistake of running on assumptions rather than actually knowing what's going on.
That's a really good point. Daniel, is there anything else that you wanted to share today with the conversation? Our time on the podcast is nearly coming to an end, and I feel like we've covered so much ground from your early days in community pharmacy, your HMRs, the education, talking about the challenges that you've had personally, but then coming through that on the other side. Is there anything else you'd really like to share with our listeners?
I think perhaps for pharmacists who are considering a change in career or feel stuck where they are, a couple of things that I found helpful, and I hope it can be of value to our listeners or to listeners, is, saying yes to opportunities that come, but also to pursue opportunities rather than waiting for them to come to you. So I think that's been important. A piece of advice that was given to me once by a friend when I was sort of contemplating change, he said to me, consider changing lanes before changing highways. And what he meant by that is that it doesn't have to be something dramatic overnight. I'm going to, move into finance or something completely. Sometimes it can be just a small shift, and that can make all the difference in terms of career satisfaction. And, I think we're very privileged as pharmacists in today's day and age where we are able to create a career by design rather than one that's been dished out to us or one by default. The opportunities that are out there, I think we need to go out and speak to people, because you just don't know what you don't know. So these are just a few things that I wanted to encourage the listeners with today.
I completely agree with that. And especially the second one around finding the opportunities as well, putting yourself out there. I know, a lot of people say, oh, you have to say yes to these things. But it's like, if you're just sitting around waiting for these things to just fall across your lap, like that's not the way it happens. And whilst it might look like that sometimes from the outside, there's sometimes like a lot of work put in behind the scenes. So like we were chatting earlier around like networking and things like that. And so it's not that you're networking going out to find what this opportunity is, but it's just being open, I think. So from my perspective, that's kind of what I take from that.
Yeah. And I think in being open, like I think the realization as well that progress can look, progress towards change can be messy. It's not some linear line where everything's straightforward, and it is messy. And sometimes you take a few steps back, a few steps forward. But I think my experience has been, especially as a bit of a perfectionist in pharmacy and making sure, you don't make mistakes and things like that, that doesn't serve us as well when it comes to change. And so I focus on sort of progress over perfection and letting action give you feedback rather than overthinking things. I think sometimes it's when we take those steps and try different things and let the feedback that comes from that inform our next steps is where our progress is made, as opposed to sort of trying to think through the perfect strategy or exit strategy or whatever it is. I don't think that exists, or it hasn't been my experience anyway.
Oh, yes, I totally agree. And it definitely hasn't been my experience either. And just to expand on that, I think when that friend of yours that mentioned about changing lanes before changing highways. I think that's really powerful. And I think sometimes from the outside, if you're watching people's careers progress, it might look like people are just all of a sudden changing highways, or maybe they're not even in a car anymore. They're flying away in a helicopter. And you think, how on earth did that happen? But yeah, if I look back on my own career, and you're probably the same, there's all these like little moments that probably started you on the trajectory. Like you talked about community pharmacy, but then just dropping down to part-time first. Like that then that's a huge change, but then it's a stepping stone to giving you a little bit more freedom to explore other things. So I think, yeah, sometimes, yeah, those changing lane things can lead to changing highways down the track, but you just might not realize it at the time.
Yeah, and I think it's really about enjoying the journey and realizing that change takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. And so it's just about embracing that journey and giving it time. Yeah,
absolutely. Although it would be nice if it did just happen overnight. But let's be honest, that is not life. That is not real life.
No.
Well, Daniel, it's been absolute pleasure speaking to you today, getting to know you a little bit more on a personal level, and hearing about your career over the last, I guess, couple of decades since year 9 in working in pharmacy. Thank you for coming on the show. Really appreciated it.
Thank you very much for having me, Christy. Really enjoyed having a chat with you.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Your Pharmacy Career Podcast, proudly sponsored by the Pharmaceutical Society of Australia. The PSA is committed to empowering pharmacists through advocacy, innovation, and industry-leading professional development. To become a member or learn more about how the PSA can support your career, visit www.psa.org.au. Don't forget to subscribe, share this podcast with your colleagues, and join us next time as we continue to explore your pharmacy career journey.